You look
Hey,
pretty. Let me
hey
tell you how
everybody.
Caressa, she texted me, she's like,
Thank
are you
you.
getting dressed up? I'm like, I'm wearing a hoodie. And then here you are. Looking gorgeous.
I got on a hoodie
Happy
too. Kind of,
holidays.
sort of. Happy
When
holidays to you too.
winter's
So
here,
good to
I'm
be
in
on here.
her.
Look at
I
winter.
stole your friend. We're going to have a conversation about grieving the life that we thought we were going to have and how to move forward. Anyways, come on in,
Mm.
you guys. Please leave your questions in the comment section. People are coming
Hi,
in.
Sandra.
I'm Lula. I am a life
Mhm.
coach consultant. I love amplifying Black women's stories, diaspora women stories, and this topic tonight about grieving the loss of what you thought your life would be is so personal to me because I never thought you can grieve it. Well, at least my relationship to grief was something
Mhm.
different. So, but tonight we have Caressa Jennings. She is a writer, media contributor, life coach, grief and loss expert, and motivational speaker. And she does a lot more. I have to bring her back about branding. She runs DC, so this woman is just a little bit of
You
everything.
know.
So she does it all. So she's like a one-stop shop for, I want to say, like personal identity, like branding identity. Yeah. So anyways,
Yep.
come on
Yep.
in.
Mhm.
Thank you for joining, everyone. Can you tell us a little bit about you? Maybe like stuff that I didn't talk about.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. So hey everybody, I'm Caressa J. I'm from the DMV area. Um, I'm super excited to be on here. Grief and loss is one of my favorite topics, believe it or not. But I am the owner of Caressa J Agency, so that's a full service branding and VIP concierge. So like you said, we're a one-stop shop. So we have that here. And then I also am a grief and loss expert. I'm certified in that. And yeah, that's just a little
I'm
bit
so
about
excited
me.
that you're here.
Just a
So
tad.
I'm just recovering from a cold, so my pronunciations are a bit off.
Yeah.
My voice, I
It's okay.
apologize about that. So tonight, like I mentioned earlier,
Yeah.
we're talking about grief and what that looks like. So you are an expert in this field. I recently had
Mm-hmm.
about not recently, maybe like 2 years ago is really when I was at a therapy
Mm-hmm.
session when my therapist told me, I think you're
Mm-hmm.
grieving the life that you're not living or the life that you thought you were going to have. And that's that doesn't make sense. I'm like, I didn't lose anyone. So like you lost the life that you thought you were going to have. So that's grief. That's a loss. And I want to ask
Mm-hmm.
you questions about, I guess, how grief is generally defined from point of view, and then we can talk
Yeah.
about how people view it. So, how do you define grief?
Yeah. So first off, that's a thing. Like grieving the life you thought you would have. Like I have gone through that probably like 3 or 4 times in the last 5 to 8 years. You know, when you I would say like one of the most influential events in your life are unplanned. Okay, like
Yeah.
and life happens while you're making plans. And so typically we don't realize that, we deal with grief on a regular basis, especially loss. Like we have small losses, big losses. A small loss could be you go to Target and they don't have the right size shirt and you're losing it, right? Because you really, really want it and you're really blown in the moment because you're like, oh my gosh, I want this so bad. And so that's what you would call a small loss versus a big loss, which might be more relational. Anytime somebody hits grief and loss, they immediately think of death all the time. And I'm like, no, we grieve all day, every day. We just don't identify it as that because we feel like someone may not have passed away. But as you know, when you're losing a friendship, you lose your identity, you lose peace, you lose joy, you lose money. We respond to that, and typically it's a level of grief. And so a lot of times we either suppress or repress. I always say suppressing or repressing, meaning you're consciously blocking it out of your head or unconsciously blocking it out of your head, but you really want to express it to your friends and confess it to God. I always say that you want to express it to friends and confess it to God, because if not, it will eat at you. I always say it's not always what you
Mm.
eat that kills you, it's what eats at you that kills you. And so when you start thinking of it like that, like, oh my gosh, on a regular basis, I'm grieving different types of losses, you start paying attention more to what's going on with you on a day-to-day basis. And so I started, once I identified that grief is a thing, right, other than death, and that loss happens all day, every day, I started paying attention to that And even had to pay attention to that recently, like in the last month or two. Like, I've been tripping. I'm like, what is going on with me? I knew it was grief, but I just didn't know why, you know? And like you said, sometimes we're grieving, you know, I'm single with no kids, so it might be okay. But you know, when you're growing up, you're like, by this age, I'm going to do all these things, right? Or you're in business and you're super excited about maybe a partnership or a contract, or you're super excited about, you know, maybe a networking opportunity, whatever it is, and it doesn't go as planned. You grieve that because you were excited about it and you thought that that would potentially take your life or your purpose or connect you to your destiny. And that's basically overall what it is. We have these plans and we have these goals and we have this vision for our life. And when it doesn't, when the life path doesn't connect with your vision, you grieve it. And so how do we deal with that? So I always tell people you have to feel it so that you can deal with it so that you can heal it. Okay, feel it so that you can deal with it so that you can heal it. Because we do everything in our life to avoid pain. Everything. I don't care if it's getting a shot versus breaking up with somebody versus, you know, you hurting yourself outside. Everything we do in our life is to avoid pain, to avoid the magnitude of what that may mean to us. Because sometimes it literally makes our heart throb and hurt. It gives us a headache. It makes us sick. And so one thing I had read a while back, it was saying 3 things that we don't realize that we have on a regular basis is unresolved grief, unresolved resentment, and unresolved regret. Grief, resentment, and regret. Those things right there are like demons.
That's a whole lot to unpack. That's like resentment, like, oh my goodness.
Yeah. So, because think about the grief that we may not process or deal with on a regular basis. Think about all of the things that you may have regret in your life. And then think about the resentment that you may have. I know moms talk about it all the time. Friends talk about it. People who date talk about it. So unresolved grief, resentment, and regret are literally, they're like, I would say destiny barriers or blockers, you know, and we don't understand that these are the things that we have to pay attention to. If all of us would pay attention to our losses and the lessons that they teach us, and the guides that they give us, because a lot of times they're guides. I was grieving this opportunity the other day, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get this position, and it's going to be so great, and they denied me, and I was blown away. Because honestly, it wasn't even about my ego per se. I was overqualified. I'm like, there's no reason why they wouldn't give that to me. But I took it as, okay, this is just pointing me in the right direction towards, you know, destiny and where I'm supposed to be. And that's how I just chose to deal with it. And I think sometimes if we would just think about what it is that we feel like we're losing and identify that it may be helping us, getting us to a better place or closer to where we're supposed to be, we would embrace it more. So I would say we need to embrace our loss, deal with the pain, feel it so that we can deal with it, so that we can heal it, so that we can move forward in our
No,
life.
that
I know
you
that was a
touched
long
upon
answer.
so many great points, and we have some questions that people also dropped in the comment section. I saw it. I'm gonna circle back to those questions. Caressa, you were just saying about feeling your emotions, right? Like everything always comes back to our emotions, and also being able to ask your question, like, what do I feel like I'm losing? Being able to identify. That's such a powerful question to ask. My first time really realizing that I lost something was, as many of you guys know or don't know, I'm an immigrant to this country, and like my family is a refugee to the US, right? So I lost the life that I had back home in Ethiopia. And at 13-year-old, like, you're not processing that as like a loss. You're just like, oh, I miss my family. But the impact of the displacement has on your mental state, like the cultural aspect of it, it takes a toll on you in various ways. So I didn't process it as a loss until I was like late in my 20s. And then when you realize it was a loss, it's a whole mental break that happens. You're just like, oh wow, that's the life that I really thought I was going to have, but I no longer have that. So how do people redirect their energy into living in the reality of their situation versus like living maybe in the past of what they thought they were going to have?
Oh, that's good. I think it all goes down to identity and really just connecting with, like, who am I? You know, what is my purpose? I always say we have, and I'm not trying to make it this cliche, but we have talents, we have abilities, we have
Mm-hmm.
gifts, we have skills, right? Tags, talents, abilities, gifts, and skills. And we identify those things, and then we look at purpose. I'm really big on purpose. Purpose to me is, how do I intentionally impact somebody's life when they cross my path? Okay. So you're basically looking, okay, where am I today? What are my talents, abilities, skills, and my gifts, or whatever? What do I feel is like my destiny or my purpose? You know,
Yeah.
how can I make the best of it? You know, this is where I am. How do I need to proceed? How do I need to move forward? Because a lot of times we have to deal with the past, but we stay stuck there. So it's kind of like, okay, let me accept, where am I today? Even when someone passes away, we do this avoidance thing where we don't want to acknowledge or accept that this is what happened. So it's like, okay, let me accept that this is my life today. This is where I'm at today. Have grace with yourself, and then say, okay, now how can I move forward in a
Yeah.
way that's best serving to me? How can it be purposeful? How can I feel like I'm using the best of my gifts, my skills, my talents, my abilities? And how can I move forward? I think that's one of the things that has been good for me, even my siblings, when we grieve a lot, because a lot of people are like, oh, yeah, I just don't feel. I'm like, no, we feel it, but we are really big on acceptance and acknowledging and owning our moment. And so for you, when you was like, oh my gosh, this is my reality, and you own that moment, you had that mental and emotional breakdown, if you will, because it was like, okay, this is my truth. And we do a lot of, again, of avoiding pain and avoiding our truth. And so when you don't avoid
Mm-hmm.
it and you sit in it, and it
Mm-hmm.
hurts. That's why I say feel, deal, heal. You know what I mean? It hurts, but you can't go over it or under it or around it. You have to go through it. And so that's how I would say, owning it, and then figuring out or
Yeah.
identifying like what your purpose or your destiny is in that, and working towards that. Sometimes
So
you
it's
have
like
to create a new
defining
vision
your
for your
new
life.
identity in the new space that you're in, right? So it's like a
Yeah.
foreign concept for all of us
Mm-hmm.
because we don't know who we are in this new space because we've been holding on to who we thought we were in the past. So,
Mm-hmm.
what are the side effects of ignoring grief? Um,
Mm. Annoyance, irritability, sadness, fatigue, all the things. All the things. A lot of times, irritability, overwhelm, stress, the things that we know we normally we might deal with, and just think, you know, it might be a seasonal depression, or it might be, you know, you're just stressed out from work and things like that. That's why I said it's really good to acknowledge and
mm-hmm.
identify what your daily losses are, so that you can kind of tap in and check in with yourself. That's why it's so good now that we're in a world where everybody now is kind of trendy, is big on mental and emotional wellness. We're big on personal development now. We're big on checking in with ourselves. We're big on identifying like what our feelings are, because we usually just go day to day. And, you know, loss is the only thing I
Yeah.
think, maybe other than like sickness and death, is unavoidable. We want to have loss all the
Hmm.
time, but grief is a choice. And grief, I believe, is God's gift to us to navigate loss. Grief is actually, especially when someone passes away, like your last act of love that you give towards that person. And so when you think about it like that, like, wow, I'm grieving this person, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. I'm basically giving you homage, right? I'm basically identifying like, hey, you
Yeah.
mean something to me. I value you. So I am hurting from this, but I'm going to feel it so that I can deal with it. And I don't really believe in all and this has been very controversial. I've been in a lot of meetings and stuff about this. I don't really believe in all the 7 ways to grieve, or, the 6 you got to
Yeah.
acknowledge and avoid, because
Yeah.
everybody's situation is different.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody grieves the same. Everybody, you know what I mean? And it really just depends, you know what I mean, on who you are, how you're made, and how you deal with things,
This
period.
just
So,
made me think
yeah.
about 3 weeks ago. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
An experience that I had, which
Mm-hmm.
is like just an experience of loss, but also an experience of gratitude for something good that was happening. It was like two different emotions existing at the same time. And in that moment, I felt like I was dishonoring
Hmm.
the life that I currently have because like I was also processing
Okay.
the life that wasn't there. And then it got me thinking about the
Hmm.
duality of our emotions and how all these emotions can exist at the same times. We're not really taught to cope with all the emotions at the same time. We're always taught like pick an emotion and stick to that. And usually when we're
Hmm.
experiencing unpleasant emotions like loss, anger, resentment, whatever the case might be, that could be such a space you can bury yourself in and you look at what else is
Hmm.
happening around me that I can maybe my perspective to. So
Hmm.
I want to talk to you a little bit about how various emotions can exist at the same time. Like how do you deal with like maybe something good happening to you at the same time you're losing something else at the same time
Yeah.
as well?
It's so funny. My mother was telling me a story not too long ago, and it was about my brother, and he was say leaving a job. I want to say it was like at a grocery store, and he had got a government position, and he
Yeah.
was heartbroken in his car, like crying and stuff. He was like, "This doesn't make any sense," and it's like, you got to remember, you've had time here, you've had relationships here, this was your first job, you loved it, but again, you're transitioning to something new. There's actually such thing as adjustment disorder, or yeah, because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's hard for us to adjust. I always tell people embrace the new. And we don't realize that we have to embrace the new season of our life, our new identity. We have to have grace for
Mm-hmm.
ourselves. Like, these are real life things that we just pass over. We're just like, oh, okay, I got this new position, I got this new job, I got this new man, I got this new house, I got this new baby. Don't you think moms are grateful sometimes, most of the time, that they have their new baby, but they're also sad and mourning their old life? So this is a normal thing where you're like mourning one thing that may not necessarily be bad, but
Yeah.
embracing the new thing that may even be challenging. And so it's learning to say, hey, I think we have gone on for many years without connecting to ourselves. We don't know really who we are. We don't know what we feel, what our feelings are. We don't know what makes us always happy, joyous, what makes us sad. It's okay to be emotional beings. We've made it feel like crying is a bad thing, whether it's good or bad. We get embarrassed and ashamed about it, right? Somebody saying, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. It's like, why are you
Yeah.
apologizing for being a human spirit? You know what I mean? And so yeah, I think embracing the new, adjusting to new opportunities, understanding that there is loss in getting the new things, right, well, like, even if it's happiness, because before you were so pissed off at your job and where you were at and things like that, and you're like, okay, well, now I'm going to embrace and identify that I had lost happiness, I had lost joy, I had lost my identity, I lost peace, I lost money, I lost
Yeah.
a partnership, friendships, partnerships, relationships. Oh my gosh,
No,
that's
it
like the
is.
hardest
I
thing.
had a friendship breakup a, a year ago,
Hmm.
and I went through the grieving
Hmm.
process, and I because I had the
Hmm.
tools and the skill set at that time, like I was able to acknowledge it, like I'm grieving.
Hmm.
I'm grieving because of a loss that just happened. So like you go through a process, but if you are not aware of that, like you're emotionally, physically, mentally, and spiritually grieving, it can come off as anger, resentment, frustration, like you mentioned that it
Yeah.
is. So I go ahead. No,
I always tell
no, no,
people, I'm sorry. Mm-mm. No, I always tell
go.
people there's a difference
Say
between
more.
moaning and mourning. Yeah, when you're moaning, it's like having like a pity party. You know what I mean? It's like, oh my gosh, this is this, or I'm blown about this. But when you're mourning, you're acknowledging it and you're dealing with it so that you can express it to your friends and confess it to God. And so that helps with not having displaced anger. Because I've had somebody I was talking to my sister one day, and she's like, oh my gosh, just
Yeah,
leave me alone. But it's like,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
not even personal. You know what I mean? But it's displaced anger because you're grieving something else, and something else is on your mind. A lot of times too, I even notice with like social media that a lot of us we're dealing with loss and overwhelm from like comparison and competition and all of that. And we experience unworthiness, right? Do we qualify? Are we capable? Do we have what it takes? Are we good enough? Just all of those things. And those are feelings of maybe loss towards ourselves because we have allowed our self-esteem to come from the outside. We have put our value in the hands and the palms of other people. And so our worthiness is unstable. right? Our value is not in a safe place. It's rocky because we have put ourselves and our value again in other people's hands. And so when we take that from them, which is something I've been really practicing this whole week in my personal time, is like, hey, take your value out of the hands of somebody else. How dare you just give up your worth to somebody else, to these strangers and people who you have no idea who they are, as if they are capable of telling you who you are, and they didn't even create you.
Is
You know
that
what I mean?
because
All
of
they do
the
is criticize.
expectations that we have? Because you gave the example earlier, like the job, right? The job that you thought you were going to get because you were
Mm-hmm.
overqualified and you didn't have it. There was an
Mm-hmm.
expectation that you have set. So
Mm-hmm.
your value in that moment can potentially be defined as like, I'm a professional, have X, Y, amount of years. I'm definitely
Yeah.
qualified for this job. And how dare you tell me no? So like, and then that puts you in the pity party that you have for yourself
Mm-hmm.
of, not you in general, but I'm just kind of go through of
Yeah.
how the
Yeah.
power can be taken away from you, and that can kind of really create the space of loss in various ways.
Mm-hmm. I tell people the two side effects of grief are, what was I going to say? Offense is one, and rejection. We do everything. We really struggle and deal with a lot of offense and rejection. When you deal with grief, especially even when somebody dies, or when you have a breakup, rejection is something that is like the entire world, the entire universe deals with that. Nobody wants to deal or suffer with rejection. And it's very easily for us to get offended. And if you ever lost someone, you could probably identify that you get offended very easily by what people say, they don't say, if they're supportive, if they're showing up for you, if they're doing what they need to do. You don't realize that you're offended, right? And so, and then rejection, you feel like, well, they weren't there for me, they didn't have my back. Oh, we spent 20 years with each other, you know, we had this opportunity. So we don't identify the rejection and offense. I tell you, those are two curses, seem like, you know what I mean? And we deal with that on a regular basis, and that's actually a critical entity when it comes to our value and our worth too, because we don't want to be rejected. And so when you talk about the job, when you talk about the relationship, you
Yeah.
know, whatever, the house, whatever it is, you don't
Yeah.
want to be rejected, and then you're
Yeah.
offended
My
by it.
mom always
So
says being offended is a choice. I'm
yeah,
like,
it comes up really, really, really quick. So it's like how you handle people that matter to you is important. How you handle, you know, your feelings and emotions when you deal with loss is important. A lot of times we wonder why people act and do the things they do, and it's really because of brokenness and hurt and feeling of betrayal. But betrayal, that falls under the rejection and the offense. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Feeling like, wow, how dare you do this to me? And you'll see that, you know, this even in reality TV. Like a lot of the times, it's
it
rejection and
is.
offense. 9 times out of 10, that those are the two things that people are feeling. And it also connects with their value and their worth, and giving it in the hands of other people. And so when you take back your worth, when you take back your value and put it in your own hands, and you identify who you are and what your
I
purpose
agree
is, life will
with
be so
that. There
much
was a
easier.
question that was, how does grief affect your mental health state? Like, how does that show up?
Mm. Yeah, so mentally it could be overwhelm, anxiety, feeling like, again, like shame, feeling like, you know, you're not good enough and all of that, but then also feeling like um, you just lose you. It might cause you like to feel like you lost a sense of who you are and what you want, and not knowing what's next, and
Yeah.
having like a loss of vision and purpose, and having to figure out, because remember, you're losing what you thought your life was going to be. You know what I mean? So you could feel like, okay, I'm going crazy. Is life does it have meaning? Does it have worth of value? Like, should I still keep showing up because I know what I thought I wanted? I thought I knew what life would be like, but as showing up is something differently. And so you have to embrace your new. You have to embrace, you know, and think about, okay, what is the new vision for my life? And it really takes time. That's why journaling is important. Meditation is so important. Taking time to relax, taking time for friendships, taking time to just clock in, you know, and check in with yourself. Like I said, expressing it to friends and confessing it to God. Really having that intimate relationship with God and yourself of, what is my reason? What is my purpose? And sometimes you will not find it. You won't find it through a vocation. You know, some people like, it doesn't matter if you work at Nordstrom's or if you work at McDonald's. That doesn't matter. You can, that's your vocation. But
Yeah.
how you impact somebody's life while you're there, how you change the world while you're there, how you change lives and impact others while you're there, that's your purpose. And so a lot of times you run into these positions, you know, am I on the radio? Am I on TV? Am I the next Miss, you know, America? Am I whatever? And it's like you're looking for all these accolades to make you feel like something. Ask yourself, am I loving? Am I caring? Am I, you know, fruitful? Do I share with others? Am I powerful? That's where you start connecting with yourself. We're looking at, you know, do I have this degree? Do I have this education? Somebody said, tell me about yourself. The first thing we'll say is, oh, well, I'm a certified nurse, you know, or, you know, I've accomplished this
You know
thing.
what's
That is not who
crazy?
you are. That's your
So
vocation.
culturally, right? So when
Uh-huh.
someone asks, like I said, back
Yeah.
home in Ethiopia, once they say like, oh, like what do? You don't say the jobs. Like we grew up
Yeah.
saying like, oh, I'm a father. Like I have. So like
So good.
moving to America, like I was also taught this. It's just like when someone say like, oh, what do? Your job is like the pedestal that you put yourself and how people size you up, right? Like, oh, I'm a director at this place. Like, I am the chief of staff at this. Like, but okay, that's what you do. But like, it's almost like, who
Uh-huh.
are you? Not like really. Yeah.
Who are you? Yeah. Yeah, that's so good. So I had to learn that too and lost, like when you quickly feel like you're losing yourself and losing your identity or losing your purpose. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
well, let me really tap into who I am. Like I'm a great friend, you know what I mean? I'm powerful again. Like you just start thinking about all of the just things of that really just exemplifies who you really want to be known. What do you want to be most known for? I always tell people that. What do you want to be most known for? How do you want to be remembered? I went to this funeral a few months ago, and when I tell you, I didn't even know the lady like that, but I was torn down just because there were so many people that wasn't even in the family that just kept saying this person was so kind and so sweet, and she was so giving, and you know, she shared what she had, and she fed people, and she gave to college. It was just so many things that it was like she was just rich in friendship, rich in love, rich in joy. And
Yeah.
I'm like, that's how I want to be remembered. Not that, you know, I had this big old position, all that. That stuff is cool and nice. And personally, me, I love that type of stuff, right? It's like, oh, make me famous, whatever. But it's like, if you're mean and
Yeah.
nasty, if you're not giving and loving and caring, if you're not,
Yeah.
you know, making a
Yeah. Like
difference
at your
and being impactful,
core,
what is
who
it
are
all
you
for?
really? When the lights are off, when the door is closed,
Yeah.
the makeup is off, like who are you? Are you able to sleep at
Mm-hmm.
night knowing like you are at peace with yourself and how you show the world? Yeah. So I want
Yeah.
to ask you a question about how do
Yeah.
we disconnect from everything around us that are causing us to to question our values, make us compare ourselves to maybe the life that we're not living in order
Yeah.
to reconnect with ourselves? Because that is such a powerful statement that you made earlier about a lot of us are not
Mm-hmm.
truly connected to our own selves. And I think that's why we're walking around confused,
Mm-hmm.
um, just uncertain about like maybe life is going because like constantly
Yeah.
being reminded how someone else is living their life and then you're trying to adjust like, oh, maybe my accomplishment is not good enough but so and so did a lot more. So how do we
Yeah.
disconnect in order to connect with ourselves?
Yeah, definitely feeding your mind. So believe it or not, I don't even follow no shade. I don't follow the shade room. I don't follow a lot of gossip. Like I cannot do that because comparison, like I have to know my strengths and my weaknesses. You know what I mean? So a lot of stuff I do not follow. I do not respond to, you know, things like that. I love TED Talks. I love just power motivational videos and, you know, things like that's what I feed my mind on a regular basis. You know, meditation and stuff. People don't realize like that stuff is in you subconsciously too. Even when you sleep, what you have on the television before you go to bed, you're like, oh, I dreamt of so and so.
Me
And it's like because that's what
watching
was in your mind
SVU
and what you
before
were
I go to
scrolling on social
sleep, and
media. Yeah. Next thing you know, you like shooting somebody or something in your dream. So, yeah, you have to quiet the noise. It's your responsibility to quiet the noise and to feed yourself with positivity, feed yourself with motivation, inspiration. And, you know, even the music you listen to, people realize, like, I had someone, he started teaching his students something and he started playing different types of music in the car because he realized that when he was playing like hard hip hop and all that, the kids were going crazy in the car and their mindsets was just different versus when he would start changing it to like motivational and inspirational and like Eric Thomas and things like that. They started moving differently. And so that stuff really does help. And so I would just say anything motivational, inspirational, anything that feeds your mind, personal, professional development, especially emotional and mental wellness is really important. And learning about grief and loss and how that impacts us and how you can respond to it, paying attention to yourself and how you feel and how you deal with your own emotions. Like we are really disconnected people in generation because especially with now so much social media and just so many things with video and all of that. Yeah, it's really easy to do, you know, and it's captivating. So we captivate ourselves with all of this stuff and we get nosy and we want to see what everybody's doing. We're talking about who's having a baby, who's not, and who's getting married and stuff. And it's like, that stuff lasts but a moment.
it's like
You know what I
avoidance,
mean?
right? Like
So,
we try to kind of like
mm-hmm.
just get lost in everything else but our own life,
Yeah.
and that's what happens. I want to ask
Yeah.
you I want to talk to you a little bit about language to use when if you are a friend,
Mm-hmm.
loved one, someone supporting someone who is
Mm-hmm.
experiencing a loss, and not a loss as in a death of
Mm-hmm.
someone else, but loss in their life. Because growing up in an African household, it's like, did you lose someone? I'm like, no, like I just experienced like this this loss. Like I lost a friend. I just lost X, Y, and Z. They're like, oh, you'll be okay. Like just
Yeah.
go pray about it. Like you'll be
Mm-hmm.
okay. So what type of language do you use
Mm-hmm.
maybe if you are not comfortable providing that emotional support to someone, so you're not dismissing someone else's experience, but like acknowledging it in a way that supports them in that moment?
Well, one thing you don't want to do is never minimize anybody's pain, you know. I know sometimes people usually say, at least you still have more children, or at least, you know, you still have a job, or at least you don't want to do that. You don't want to minimize people's pain. You also want to stay in the moment. It's okay for someone to cry. I traveled the country for years supporting families and like, you know, high profile people, you know, deal with loss. And I never really gave them tissue like that. I never really, like if I did a be in their hand or something, if I know like ahead of time, because you don't want someone, they'll say thank you and they'll just start, you know, and they try to end it quickly. You don't really want to do that. You just want to be in the moment. It's okay just to support people where they are. You don't have to have an answer, you know. And I'm big on that. I'm quick to always talking my friends, over talking them, trying to have an answer for them because I don't like for people to feel
Yeah.
sad or like there's no way out, you know. But when I'm really like in the moment, you know, and then, you know, it's this thing when people always say, be
I
strong.
don't want
And
to be
it's like, well,
strong right
let's
now.
be
Like,
strong,
let me
you
see.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I always tell people just be courageous because it takes courage to get back up again. It takes courage to fight. It takes courage to
Life
live
life
this life.
thing
Life
and
is
life is
hard. You
hard.
know what I mean?
Yes.
Life be lifing, okay?
Yeah.
So that's why I always say be encouraged because I think courage itself is a very strong, powerful gift. And if you're courageous enough to wake back up, you know, if you're courageous to get up, and if you look up, you can believe that, hey, there's more for me in my life, and I can get through this, and I can navigate it. I think that, and never just rushing the process. Like it's okay. It doesn't have, you know, I know people say grief, you know, heals in time. Like again, I don't really believe in all the cliche stuff. Some stuff hurt. I think we learn to live with things, and then at times we have our moments. I think my dad died in like the end of 2019. So once in a while, I think about him. I can laugh or smile, or I can cry about something. Um, And it's funny because I was present during his passing, but there was some, I guess, regret kind of sort of there. Like, dang, I wish I would have known he had pain in these certain areas. I would have tried to help him out. You know what I mean? But I learned to just let that go because I'm not God. You know, we have an issue with control, the human race. We want to control everything. That's where anxiety comes from. But if this and what if that, we have to release control, you know, and when we realize that we can only take things day by day, that will really help us a lot mentally and emotionally, you know, because again, that's avoidance. We do everything we can to avoid something, especially avoiding rejection and not wanting to be offended by something. So if we deal with those two things, rejection and offense, and we feel our feelings and we're present in the moment,
you got
we'll
so
be
many
good.
great gems tonight. And I'm gonna save this live, but also be my YouTube page as well. So I always say at the end of these conversations that I have with my guests, like everything comes back to feeling your feelings. Stop avoiding it. Like sit in your feelings, and it's okay to not to be okay. And like we're constantly experiencing grief in every aspect. It's grief is not one way. It's in very small losses, big losses that occur in every aspect of our life. What before we because I could longer than I promised that I was going to keep. What advice would you give someone who is currently, and it's the holiday season, like everyone is going through that. So what advice or what tools can people use to kind of get through these wintry blues that we're having when holidays are usually when families are coming together? If you have experienced a loss, it's a reminder of what you don't have. What are some coping mechanisms that people can utilize during this time?
Yeah. And then some of this might sound even weird, but opening up the windows, eating some oranges for vitamin C. If you can take a walk, take a walk. And sometimes just being calm and listening to like calm sounds and like inspirational music is really, really helpful because again, it's what you're feeding yourself. If you're just sitting in your own thoughts, sometimes that could be a good thing and a bad thing. So sometimes you need to just pour into yourself so that when you're falling asleep, when you're waking up and things like that, you're like, you know, adjusting your mood and the energy that's in the room. I love stress relief. I love eucalyptus. I love all that stuff is helpful, especially at one time. You know what I mean? If I'm having like a real down season, I'm turning on some stress relief or candles. I'm plugging in some stuff. I'm playing some calm. I'm opening up the window so that natural light can sit in. And sometimes if you just have to sit on the couch in front of the light, do that. That's really going to, you know, impact you for the good. And then also, like I said, clementines, oranges, getting that vitamin C, drinking water, those nutrients, those things really do help. And if you can go for a walk, go for a walk. But meditation, prayer, all of those things are great outlets to do. And not even being like deep, like it really is helpful to you. Yeah, so that you can, and then journaling and tapping into what your feelings are. You know, I didn't know for a while that I had that grief or resentment or whatever and regret, you know, about my dad until I kind of was like, what is that? Where is this coming from? So sometimes it takes you being settled and still. You get a lot of answers.
I agree. We have a question that came in. If you grieve a certain time of the year, what's the best way to prepare?
That's good. I think one is once you identify that, I don't know, like if the person works or in school and things like that, just planning around it, meaning like if you're going to work every day from 9 to 5, you may need to tell your boss, hey, for like an hour a day, I might have to step away, or hey, I'm dealing with something around this time. I need my time. You know, I might have to go to the car or to whatever. Like making the adjustments so that those around you may even be aware if you're married or you have kids, so they know, hey, I just need my time alone. Sometimes you don't need to be alone. So if you need to prepare by like telling, hey, y'all, Tuesday and Thursday night is girlfriend night, let's have fun or whatever, you know what I mean? So that way you're out and you're around people that love you and care about you. Those are things. So I would say I also do this thing. I know it's big, everybody's big on vision boards, but it's like a thing called happiness board. So it may not be things that you want to acquire or get to, but what is already in your life that you can be happy about. So doing a happiness board is great because there are things that you're already probably grateful for. In fact, the root word, I can't think of the dictionary. It's like a special green dictionary. I can't think of the name, but I think it's the American dictionary. The root word of happiness is blessed. So a lot of times we're chasing like something for happiness when really if we would just look at whatever our blessings are even right now,
For
that will
sure. One of the
increase
things
our
that I
mood.
also
So
do,
yeah.
I know certain seasons throughout the year that I know, like, mentally I'm exhausted, I'm burnt out,
Yeah.
just the cold doesn't help. I'm an avid walker, so usually the cold I'm
Mm-hmm.
like dreading to go outside because I'm like, I'm in this cold. It
Yeah.
It's like
And it gets
nothing is
darker
exciting, nothing is
earlier.
motivational like to get you out there. So one of the things that I do is to
Yeah.
answer the question about preparing. I communicate with my loved ones that
Mm-hmm.
like, hey, like this time of the year, you're not gonna get high energy Lula like you usually get it. And I'm a summer baby, so in the
Mm-hmm.
summertime you get all of me, but around this time I'm
Mm-hmm.
usually like in my own little space in my bed. It's just kind of like alone in solitude, right? So being able to communicate
Yeah.
with your loved ones, the people that are closest to you, and ask for help if that is
Mm-hmm.
the most difficult time that you're experiencing. If there's seasons
Yeah.
throughout the year that you experience some difficulties, there's nothing wrong with asking for help.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely do that. Caressa,
Yeah.
you have been amazing. I have to bring you back because this felt like I was just talking to one of my girlfriends.
Anytime. I love what you're doing. You're very impactful. It's very purposeful. It's going to change so many lives. I'm super excited for what's next for you and what's to come out of this because I already know like you're really touching on some great topics and these are things that people need to hear. So continue to do it. Don't stop because
Oh,
I know that
that means
lives
a
are going to be
lot. I'm
changed.
working on taking compliments, so I'm going to receive
Mm-hmm.
that. And 2023 is for sure, I
Mm-hmm.
think, going after the things that I personally have limited myself because mentally, I just told myself I couldn't do
Mm-hmm.
that. Someone said, "Oh, what's your friend?" Hello. um, and I apologize. I called you Carnessa earlier. I apologize. No, 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 no.
It's
It is
fine.
not fine.
It's
So,
fine.
so any goals for 2023? I don't believe in the year resolution, but if you do, no
Oh.
judgment. Any goals, any like intentions that you have for next year?
Mm-hmm. Be more
Ooh,
consistent,
child.
be more disciplined. Oh
I
my
feel like
gosh, discipline
you're
in every
talking to me.
area
Like I'm
of my life.
like,
So
yeah,
she said a husband, yes, and a husband too. A husband and being more disciplined and consistent. Discipline in my emotional mental wellness, working out, in business, showing up more. I'm being intentional about friendships, and my me time because I'm always all over the place, always giving and caring and doing things, especially in business. So just making sure that I check in with myself.
yes.
All the
Like
things that I talk
as
about
we're
and
getting
teach. So
older, like I hopefully everyone is also realizing, but I'm realizing it starts with me. Everything starts with me. Like the energy that I put
yeah.
in within me is what
Mm-hmm.
everyone else also exudes. So plant, water yourself, take care of
Yeah.
yourself, sleep. That's something I'm working on personally. Discipline and being consistent is another big goal. I mean, big trying to show up intentionally for next year as well for me. So I will text you if I
Yeah.
need some accountability on that part. I'm going to need that. So
Yes.
where people
Yes.
where can people find you?
Yes. On all social media, Instagram, Facebook, and the like. At Caressa Jennings. And they can follow my
She
business
is
page at Caressa J
dope,
Agency.
y'all. I'm
So
telling you, she is all one-stop shop. If you're in the DMV area, definitely hit her up. If you are experiencing grief, loss, um, need some life coaching, some self-branding, and everything else in between. So I will leave all of your information under this live, but I will also link it to
yes.
YouTube as well, so you can find her that way. I really appreciate you for making time to have this
Thank
conversation
you.
with me. Of course, like
Thanks for
I
having
personally took a
me.
lot of great gems and lessons that I definitely will be applying it to my life. If you're just joining us, don't worry, this will be saved and then it'll also be saved, so you didn't miss out anything. But thank you so much. Happy holidays, happy New
Perfect.
Year, everyone. Thank you so much for
Thank
joining, and I
you.
hope you all have a wonderful night. Bye, y'all.
See ya.